over here. 7 p.m. I'd like to call the November 9th, 2020 City Council meeting to order. Because of COVID restrictions, our meeting tonight is being held virtually via Zoom. Public comments for this meeting were accepted in advance by mail and email. These comments will be read into the public record shortly. If you'd like to submit a public comment for our next meeting, please visit www.merriam.org and follow the directions listed there. As a reminder to the City Council, please be conscientious of others trying to speak slowly and clearly, and state your name prior to speaking. If I need to confirm something that might have been difficult to hear, I will ask for clarification. The format for the City Council consideration on items tonight will be staff presentation. Then I will open a time for council questions. Please hold any questions till the end of the staff presentations. And if you have a question when I ask for them, please physically raise your hand so that I can see it on your video. Of course, don't forget to unmute as well. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Sisson.
Here.
Councilmember DeVold.
Here.
Councilmember Hands.
Here.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Here.
Councilmember Naff.
Here.
Councilmember Neal. Councilmember Pape.
Here.
Councilmember Silvers.
Here.
Councilmember Yodridge.
Here.
Very good. Next item is public comments. Julie, would you please read any public comments that were submitted in advance into the record?
There were no public comments submitted this evening, Mayor.
Very good. No public comments submitted. We'll move to the consent agenda. We have a rather lengthy consent agenda list this evening, and all items listed under this heading are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests, in which case that item is removed from the consent agenda and considered separate. We have 6 items on the agenda this evening. Does any member of the council wish to remove any of these items for individual consideration? Okay. Seeing none, then I will accept the motion and a second to approve. Bob Pape. You're going to have to.
You're on mute.
What did I just tell you?
Oh my gosh. I could hear you. You couldn't hear me. I would move that the council approve consent agenda items 1 through 6.
And Chris Hands.
And I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeVold.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Naff.
Aye.
Councilmember Pape.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodridge.
Aye.
Very good. We're going to move to the mayor's report. The first item on the agenda for the mayor's report is the ETC survey discussion. Is this yours, Mr. Engel? Nope. Yes, no? You're muted.
Sorry. Okay. It's a Monday, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Fine.
I'm going to share my screen with you here. You can see my ETC survey, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it is time again for the city to do our round of citizen surveys. And so since we have some new people on the council since the last time we do this, I'm going to do a brief history of the survey, and then we're going to talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at City Council AV project.
Oh,
Same. Yeah.
sorry. Let's see.
There's 2 PowerPoints up there. Just the AV project is the one that's in the front. So
What
maybe
about
it's,
now?
there you go.
Okay.
There you go.
I was trying to get, I don't know what I was doing. I told you Monday. Okay. So I'm going to go over the history of the ETC survey, and then we're going to talk about the business survey component of it, since that was added as part of the budget this year, and then we'll dive into the parts of the citizen survey that we get to customize. So for those who have not been through an ETC survey before, this is something that we do every 3 years generally. We've been doing it since 2000. And if you recall, during the 2021 budget process, we approved the addition of doing a business survey. In the past, we've only done a citizen survey, and so this will be the first year that we are surveying our businesses using the same format. If anybody is interested in the past results, they are available on our city website, or I'm happy to email you a copy of those reports. Just let me know. So ETC Institute is actually a local company. They're out of Olathe, Kansas, and they are generally considered to be one of 2 companies across the United States who specializes in doing these type of surveys for cities and local governments. And typically what happens is once you select one of these companies to work with, you continue using them because you want the benchmark data. You want to see year over year using the same set of questions. So that is why we're continuing to use ETC survey for this. The other nice thing about using ETC is because they survey cities and local units of local government across the country, we get that benchmark data. And so as part of our report, not only do we see how we compare to other cities in the Kansas City metro, we also see how we compare to nationwide benchmarks as well. So just to lay out the timeline for what our project looks like this year, this is our kickoff conversation, and I'm going to just do a high-level overview this evening, and we're going to start talking about the survey tools that we'll be using. Tomorrow, I'm going to send out copies of those tools to give everybody a chance to look at them more in depth. We'll have a follow-up conversation at our next council meeting with the goal either at that meeting or the December 14th meeting to get a final survey tool approved for both the citizen and the business survey. Once that happens, ETC will get to work. They put together the sample list for the citizen survey, and we will provide them with a list of all of our businesses for the business survey. And those surveys will be distributed after the first of the year. So they'll work for about 6 weeks to send out the surveys, do an email or phone follow-ups with those people who received a survey, so we get the minimum number that we need to have a statistically significant result. They'll analyze it, and then the goal is at the February 22nd meeting, I'll be back to present the results from both of those surveys. Just high level about how these surveys work. They are administered anonymously by the ETC Institute. So for the citizen survey, it's about a 12 to 15 minute survey. It's typically 5 pages or so long. And ETC sends them out to a random sampling of households in the community. So not every household will get a survey. And so sometimes just based on past experience, people will hear like, oh, there's a survey out, can I complete it? Usually we just refer them to ETC and let ETC handle all of it because we don't want to be part of the collection of those results. But they will send out enough surveys and then do follow-up phone calls using the phone and online resources to make sure that we get at least 400 surveys completed. And by doing that, that'll give us a precision of plus minus 5% at the 95th level of confidence. Last time we had almost, I think it was just over 700 surveys that were returned to us. So we have I think our community knows to look for this. A lot of them have participated in it before. And so what that means for us is that our precision level actually gets greater the more surveys we have returned. So ETC will process as many surveys as we get sent back in. So it's great that we're so engaged. I've worked in other communities where that has not been the case, and the ETC has had to do a lot of work getting people to turn their surveys in. The business surveys work a little bit different. all of our businesses will receive a survey. We will provide them a list of everybody with the business license, and ETC will mail it out. Then they will, and it's, there's a typo here. Our goal is to have 60 surveys completed by mail or online. We only have about 400 businesses. So 60 is the number that they're shooting for. Because the sampling is so small and it works a little different, they don't actually assign a level of confidence to this survey. So I just want to let you know from the beginning that those results will look a little different. It doesn't mean they're not valid. It just means they may not be statistically significant. The other thing to know about ETC is they use a very standardized tool for the citizen survey. It's one that every community who uses ETC typically uses. That's how we get that benchmark information. For their business survey, they are just in the process right now of implementing a standardized tool. Not a ton of communities do a business survey. It's something that's just kind of taking off. So we will be using their standard tool as part of the business survey so that we're able to benchmark against other communities and to set ourselves up for future success, assuming we continue to want to do this moving forward. So before I get into the business survey and the citizen survey components, are there any questions about how these surveys work or ETC in general?
Bob, I think has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, you're unmuted. You're muted now.
Keep going.
okay. I'm unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Unmuted, all right, because I don't even see myself anymore. Somehow I've lost the rest of us. But my question was, you had indicated that if somebody does not receive a survey from ETC, that we could just direct them to ETC and they would or may not also be able to complete one.
So typically, I mean, I'll just tell you that I've seen them handle it both ways in the past. Typically, they try to not let people in who are just interested in doing it because they really want it to be a randomized sample of people. So like, we just won't have a link up on our website where anybody can go in and fill out the survey. They have to go through the ETC process. So typically what I've done in the past is send them to ETC. It's easier to let people into it now that there's an online component to it. But I've had them both say like, no, we need you to go through the process, and yes, we'll let people in. So I think they tend to really prefer to protect their sampling and not let people in if at all possible.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure because I didn't know if I was supposed to, if people ask me whether I was to say, yeah, just contact ETC and you'll be able to fill one out.
Yeah, no, I mean, typically they're looking for a random sampling, and people who volunteer are kind of self-selecting into that process, which is why they typically don't allow it, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Any other questions?
Yes, this is Chris Hands.
Go ahead.
And my question, it's not showing that my speaker's working.
Yep.
My question is, are we going to communicate with the businesses because they probably don't know that this is coming down, maybe when they get their licenses this year or something?
Yeah, we could do that. So they'll get a cover letter with it as well, to let them know. And that's one of the reasons that they send it to all of the businesses, especially in the first year, because people don't know to look for it.
Have they done a business survey before anywhere?
Oh, yeah. They do them across the country. And actually, like, so when I was in Riverside more than 10 years ago, we were doing a business survey there. They're just now taking steps to standardize it and use the same tool in all the communities. So yeah, they do them across the country. We're certainly not new in that.
I see.
Yep.
Anybody else have a question? Okay, go forward.
Okay, great. All right, so to talk a little bit more about how the business survey works, like I said, I'll send a draft copy of the survey out to you all tomorrow so you can see more in depth what the questions are and have some time to process them. But in general, it looks at 5 different categories of questions. It evaluates the city service delivery. It asks them questions about the perception of our community. And then this is different from the citizen survey. It looks at workforce issues and their future plans. So for example, like in the next year, do we anticipate that you'll still be in business? Are you thinking about changing locations? That sort of stuff, so we can get a sense of what's happening related to the stability of the business community. And then it asks them some questions about demographics. I will actually tell you that Shawnee does do a business survey as well. So hopefully we'll get some good benchmark data against what they use, because they have also started to use the standardized form. All right, any questions about the business survey before I move on? All right. Okay, so the citizen survey, again, you'll get a copy of the 2018 survey tomorrow to begin to take a look at. I'll actually title it the 2021 draft survey, just so we're all working from the same document. And because we are benchmarking, the vast majority of these questions stay consistent year after year. There is an opportunity to add some custom questions on the final page that let us get specific feedback on issues that we may be dealing with throughout the community at the time that the survey is sent out. But there's only about half a page to be able to do that. So we have to be very cognizant of that when we're selecting the topic, because we are limited in the number of questions and our ability to provide a lot of detail about those subjects. So my goal tonight is to have a conversation about some potential topics for what those custom questions would look like. So I can start working with the staff at ETC to draft some language for you all to review during the next meeting. So I have gone back and looked at all the custom questions since we've done these surveys in 2000. And these are just some highlights of the ones that we've done the questions that we have asked starting in 2012. Just to give you a sense of how much space that we have and the type of things we've asked recently. So in 2012, we were looking at investing in older housing, open burning, our commitment to supporting diversity, and then asking a question about potential willingness or what sort of projects, or excuse me, satisfaction with what sort of projects that were created and funded from a 1/4-cent sales tax. In 2015, this is when we started to use this section to ask questions about the community center project and the future of recreation in Merriam. So you'll recall in 2015, we started looking at what should the future of the pool and the Irene B. French Community Center be. And then in 2018, we actually followed this up and started talking about, what we should do with the site of the Irene B. French Community Center, and if people would be supportive of issuing debt to pay that. Kind of taking a look at those questions and thinking through what are some of the topics that we're hearing about in the community right now. Some potential topics that we could use for 2021, and we may not have space for all of these, but just to get the conversation going, we could talk about the future of downtown or ask some follow-up questions about the 5701 site. We could ask about a single trash hauler or open burning, or I'm certainly open to other ideas. Like I said, if you give me topic ideas, I can work with ETC to put together some draft language for y'all to look at the next meeting. So that's my last slide on this. I would be happy, Mayor, to open up the floor and talk about this more.
Yeah, to do that, before we do that, I want to make one comment. Again, I know we're still in the process of trying to design how the question will look, but on the open burning question, I think we want to make sure that it states, do we want to continue the practice of open burning as opposed to do we want to do open burning? Because some people may not realize we're doing it now and it's legal with permits. So we just want to make sure we're clear. Do we want to continue it? Because and I'm very supportive of the three topics that you have there, for sure. And I'm not saying that should be something added, but those are good. And I think the council would agree that while we are elected to represent the people in our ward, we don't often know what a majority of them feel or how they feel about certain topics. This is certainly one way of trying to figure out whether a topic is worthy of being considered further. It gives us some ammunition. We've been told in some cases, particularly open burning, that that's not something we should talk about changing because we have a few people who are in favor of open burning, but I'm not sure that's necessarily how our entire city feels. So this is just the first step in trying to figure that out. So anybody else have any topics you'd like to see added or anything you'd like to add comment wise?
Well, Mayor, if I could point out, as we continue to talk about this, if we could rank those, because like do we want to continue the practice of open burning? That's 8 words. That's self-explanatory. We don't have to give a whole lot of background to that. If we want to get into single hauler and what that means, if we want to get into downtown, if we want to ask other type of questions, we might have to have some narrative just to kind of lay the groundwork so people can answer it. So we would request that whatever ones we think make the most sense, if we could kind of rank those so we know once we start running out of space where to draw that line. Thank you.
And particularly as it relates to a topic that may increase their tax load. It's one thing to, hey, would you like to have, single hauler trash? Sure. Oh, well, would you like it if it's going to cost you more money? I'm not so sure about that. So that's where the problem, I think, is people need to be informed to the degree that we can in the short number of words that we have to provide them. Chris Hands, did you have something?
I would just add that on the downtown, if we can dovetail with the project that we just recently got the grant for, it seems like we have some basis there to expand on that kind of question.
Yeah, I would, if I could, this is Chris, if I could just add on to that. When we look at those topics too, I think it might have, whatever topics those end up being, I think if we think about the likelihood or how imminent they are, I was talking to Council Member Pape earlier today, the downtown / 5701, that's money that's in the budget. That's imminent. We are going to be doing something downtown. So, not that perhaps that's in the big scheme of things more important than any other topic, but that's something that's on the agenda of things we are going to do. So we may choose to rank that higher simply because we've already committed to doing it. So again, as we think about the things that are important to us, kind of skewing it towards the things perhaps if we've already committed to doing them, that would be useful also.
Mr. Silvers.
Yes, this is Jason Silvers. Having not gone through this process before, I'm kind of figuring out it's difficult creating these questions because the mayor had just mentioned that, say, the single hauler, it might sound like a good idea until you figure out how much it might cost, except if we don't present all of the data to people taking the questionnaire, including the degradation of our streets, due to the number of trucks and the cost of keeping them up and running, with mentioning to them how taxes might go up. If we don't give them all that data, it's hard to rank it 1 through 5. So especially the single hauler question, I think can be really difficult to have on this survey.
I think that's the challenge. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up because and I'm not saying this because it's my opinion, that may be a reason why single hauler isn't a good question for the survey. But that being said, we get people that call us and ask us about it all the time. And sometimes I wonder if they even know what it is they're asking because their perspective is kind of narrow. When you start looking at all the facts, and we've done this at least 2 or 3 times since I've been mayor and even before that, because on the surface, it seems like an excellent idea. But the more you learn about it, the more it becomes I don't know, muddled or confusing or clouded. And at the end, you're not really sure what the right thing is to do. Mr. Neal, did you have a comment?
Well, obviously, yeah, I do, because I want to kind of sort of reemphasize what Councilmember Silvers just said. I think there's some issues that you need more than the simple survey to find out what people think, because we also need to present some information from which they can judge that. And so I do think that the single hauler issue is a good example of that, where there are a lot of factors that won't fit in a one line question. And I wish, again, I'm reiterating my desire to see us use some other tools for some of these kinds of outreaches. I don't know whether that means you should leave it off. I would lean towards, on that particular one, leave the single hauler question off, because I don't think we can do a good enough job framing and explaining what the options are in such a short format. But that's just kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I'm not saying I agree you leave it off. I'm just trying to figure out how in the world would you word it in such a way that a person can make an intelligent response to it. This, to me, seems more like an issue that the council was elected to actually decide, because we are representatives of our constituents, and we actually have the opportunity to hear all sides of this issue and decide what's best. That being said, certainly we have citizens who are somewhat passionate about single haulers being some measure to help with environment, or help with wear and tear on the streets, or whatever. So I'm not trying to say that their comments are not worthy of being heard. It's just a complicated issue. And I think your point is well made. Mr. DeBold?
Yeah, I mean, looking at all three of the topics that were mentioned, all of them could be loaded with details, could they not? Even with what we would do at the old community center, I mean, that question could get so long as to what the actual feedback would be, what we want done there. We don't know that. So I guess my point is, you can load that question up no matter whether it's single hauler or community center. Maybe the feedback we want is, are you interested in the city pursuing and presenting information on a single hauler? Yes or no? Maybe you want a simple response like that do we go forward looking at it, or do we not? Again, and how you would phrase that for the community center, because again, I don't know that there's any set plans. I mean, obviously we've got some renderings and things of what could happen there, but what were we going to try to get from the survey about that spot? Do we already have a specific question for 5701? I'm just throwing some things out there. So
Yeah, we don't have questions written for any of these things. I think the other point to add it, and just to say this, is that we don't have to do custom questions. And I think this is a real opportunity to get statistically significant data. And so we have a lot of polling tools. I mean, like we've started to talk about already, that we can use to get a pulse of the community. But I don't know if there's something like Chris said that's imminent, or that you really want to make sure you have like good data on. That would be a great opportunity to use these questions as well.
Well, if I could hopefully not interrupt anybody or butt in, I think we could also, if we feel like there's a level of information on some of these topics that will exceed the amount of space we have, we could, I mean, there are questions that I think we'd all like to know answers to that don't require, maybe we don't have to ask, because so I'm thinking downtown / 5701. We have a Planning Sustainable Places grant that will have a public outreach function to it. So, well, it would be great to ask me personally the type of question I would want to know from a survey that would be manageable in terms of size. scalable in terms of space that it takes on the page would be if would you be interested in the city and I'm making this up, would you be interested in the city doing something downtown if the city were willing to do something to revitalize downtown and make it more attractive and walkable, would you be willing to approve a 1/4 cent sales tax like Merriam residents did in 2000? I think that well, it's open-ended. It definitely gives us an idea on the temperature of if you, whoever you are, the reader, had a downtown that looked like whatever you, the reader, wanted downtown to look like, would you be interested to pay for it? Then it would be incumbent on us, as it will be whether we ask the question or not, to figure out what do people actually want in a downtown along Merriam Drive. But I think another, I hate to say easy question, but impactful question would be, the Kmart site has sat vacant for 8 years. Would you as a resident be agreeable to provide incentives in the neighborhood of just, I'm making a number up, $15 million to get a grocery store in the Kmart site? I mean, I think we could craft some of those that don't require a whole lot of background. I mean, I even think the open burning is a question that it doesn't require background. Our residents know what open burning is. They may not know if we allow it or don't, but I think if we say, do we want to continue the practice of open burning? That's really a yes or no question. I don't really need a whole lot of background to understand that concept. I understand that we don't have a grocery store. I understand we have a Kmart that's been sitting empty, and I understand that giving money away to developers, those are concepts that really we don't need to drill into. I don't think for our residents to get which way is the wind blowing on incentives versus the desire to have a grocery store. So I think we could, there are questions that we could ask that don't require that background.
Mr. Neal?
I agree. There's two different types of questions, and I guess it's the eye of the beholder as to what are simple enough to the yes, no questions. But Scott's comment earlier, I think, made a lot of sense that, and it inspired me to sort of think a little further. Is there a way that we could use the custom survey to drive the statistically significant audience to a secondary online survey about some of these issues with some more background?
No, so I did have a chance to ask ETC about that, and because of the way the surveys are collected, they want people to stay either on the paper form or on their page in the online form. They don't want to take people to another website to get more information. So I think if we wanted to do that, we should set that up as a separate survey that we could potentially do.
Well, what I meant was that it would just have the address to go, and they could choose to go there or not, and that would in itself be a statistically interesting piece of information. So I'm not suggesting that while they're doing the survey, that they actually go to that site, but if they're really interested in providing us some input here, for more input on this and more information, go to whatever, merriam.org/ and that's sort of a thought. I don't know whether that's possible, and I think that's a slight variation from what you were talking about.
I would also point out that we do have money in the budget and plan to implement some sort of polling software next year. So while we don't have the polling software today, it is in the budget. So we fully intend to have something. So some of these perhaps longer range things, single hauler, there's nothing that compels us to do it in 21. Open burning, there's nothing that compels us to do that in 21. I think, with the polling software, depending on what we pick, I think we could actually do a deeper dive into, here's a paragraph of information and here's 4 options, and then fill in the other depending on what the software is we end up going with. So I think we still have the opportunity to do those. While we don't have the tools currently at our disposal, they are budgeted and we're looking into them. So I think separating out the fact that we still could do some of those things, not doing it here doesn't mean it won't get done. Perhaps might be more succinct way to put it.
Yeah. I'll also add to, just to complicate this, that these questions can be open-ended. So, I mean, a couple of years in the past, we've asked kind of before 2012, things like, if you were given $100,000, how would you spend it? You know, to improve the community, how would you spend it? Or what's the number one thing you think should be, you know, Merriam's priority for the next 5 years, or something like that. So we could certainly use this as an opportunity to kind of just get a feel for what people are thinking about in the community.
I would caution, I mean, we can do that. I would
Yeah.
just caution that, because I've seen the results of that in terms of looking for something statistically.
Oh yeah, no,
valid.
it's a
We'll get a
pulse
lot of
the
good
community.
ideas.
Yeah, it's a pulse.
But yeah, it's really, I mean, we might end up with 400 variations of
Yeah.
an answer, and we can parse through those. I'm not saying we
Yeah.
shouldn't do that, but it is, it's not quite as clean and neat as when we limit the option.
Right.
Scott, do you have a question?
Just real quick is obviously trying not to get new information from residents, but maybe having them prioritize what's there. So you have, let's say these are our 3 topics that we want to add to a question. What do you as a citizen consider to be the number 1 priority? And, you know, again, just get some feedback as to what maybe their priorities are.
You know, one of the,
I mean, how statistically, I mean, again, those people that don't want burning, you know, I understand that too,
Yeah.
but again, it might be something to think about.
I think everybody, except maybe the newer council people, have come to a great understanding of the value of this survey, regardless of any custom questions, because it tells us how we're doing based on our previous ratings, and are we keeping it? And there may be places where we're slipping, and it gives us the opportunity to make some adjustments. And that's really the value of this. We shouldn't probably spend too much time or put too much weight on the custom questions. They're really there to help us as a council and as a city to decide, do we want to move in this direction, or do we want to stay away from this direction? No one has an interest in there, or is there someplace else we need to be spending our time and efforts? And that's really the purpose for this. So we can talk about the custom questions, because some of them that have come up in this conversation are really kind of out there, I think, and maybe something we'd have to take a much more serious discussion about whether we want to include them, because again, we don't want to drive this in a direction that's not going to be helpful, because it's never going to go there. We want to make sure we're on the right track. Bob, did you have a comment? Okay, yes.
You're muted.
Never seem to push the right button to make that thing unmute, but no, yeah, a couple things. One was, as we're talking about topics, and this one is not necessarily a popular topic, but you know, we've kind of come to an end, and I don't know if we want to kick it back up or even talk about this, but I'll throw it out there. Is the fact of, you know, do we want to do more art projects in Merriam? I mean, we had a 5-year plan. We've done some things like that. I'd be interested in the pulse of the community as to whether they like the art. I mean, I think this new one that we have at the community center is pretty sharp. It looks pretty neat. I think when it gets lit up, it's even gonna be better. But there's been some that have been kind of duds. And I mean, I've heard pros and I've heard negatives, but I don't even know at this point where we really stand on whether or not we should invest any more in art. So I throw that out there. I also throw out that I think we might end up with some problems in reference to our benchmarks and how we have fared, or what the citizenry thinks about Merriam, just because of the fact that we just went through COVID and a very bad 2020. So I'm wondering how that might skew or might affect or have some detrimental, maybe, you know, we may take a dive on some of our ratings just because of this year, not because of the last 3 years. So I throw that out there as to, not that we can do anything about it, but I think that's potentially an issue we may have to deal with. But I like all the topics. I like the fact that Mr. Engel had expressed earlier, and I had a pretty lengthy discussion with him, which changed my mind on some things in reference to the single hauler, which seems like you had said, Mayor, a very good idea on the surface. There are a lot of things that I personally, even though I've been involved in this for a number of years, had not even contemplated or thought about. So that could be a very difficult question for us to try to put on there, even though I think it's very important. And whether we use some other, you know, additional tool later on versus this ETC, upcoming ETC, wanted to answer that question. That's, I think we gotta get down and drill down and answer that question
We had
sometime
a-
next year, some way.
We had somebody on next door recently ask the open-ended question why Merriam doesn't do leaf pickup, for example, which
Right.
comes up annually, it seems like, and we've talked about that. Of course, we were compared with some of our neighboring cities like Roland Park that does it, and why can't we do it, and so on and so forth. And again, we can do that, if we want to pay for it. If the citizens want to pay for it, we can definitely do it. Problem is, when you bring that up, then magically they don't have the same level of enthusiasm they have had prior to that. So, yeah, I see the purpose of it. And I think, and your point was well taken. And I think another thing we need to recognize is that our city has an extremely high rating by citizens and has for the last 2 or 3 cycles of evaluations. I hope it continues. I hope it increases if it can, because we're getting close to the top. We got to recognize that it can't last forever. We got to get real here. And COVID could be, there's between the COVID and the election process that has been, I don't know, difficult, let's put it that way, regardless of your perspective, it has to have an impact on the way people feel about government in general. And that in itself could have an impact on our rating. I hope it doesn't, but it could. Scott?
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just real quick, on past survey, last one, was there questions about citizen feedback on safety and security in the city? Okay, I assume there probably would be.
They're standard.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
they ask about perceptions in the community. Do you feel safe? How do you feel safe during the daytime, at nighttime, in business areas, that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah, I would echo the mayor's comments. If you will recall, we actually set the bar in the metropolitan area on our last survey. Literally set the bar. We were off the charts compared to other Johnson County cities, and Johnson County always exceeds national trends. So yes, I hope that we exceed what we did last time, but it's going to be tough to live up to what happened last time. So again, hopefully we are able to parse through, or their ETC is able to help us parse through kind of what they're seeing nationally, because I'm sure that they can say, hey, we're seeing otherwise great cities that do great work, that have great reputations and their residents think that they do good work. We're seeing a drop of 2%, 3%, 4%, just because of that's the tenor of what's going on in the world right now between all of the things that are happening. So not to prepare anyone or to cover for any poor work on our part, but yeah, I think that just remember we had sky high ratings last time, which was great. And have no reason to think we shouldn't have them again, but there are external forces at play here that very well could impact those.
yeah. Well, and I did have a little chat with ETC about that. And they said that really, like COVID, and I think we have seen this anecdotally, is that people have been very supportive of their city services. We are getting a lot of love right now in places because, people have been home to see the services that we provide to them on a daily basis, where that normally isn't the case. So,
that's a great comment. And when you think about, well, why is this happening? And as the mayor, I've thought about this, and I don't know. You really have to boil down to 2 things. And I hope I don't sound out of line here, but we have residents who truly do love our city. That's obvious. I think we have employees and we have the council who are dedicated in trying to make this a great place. I don't think that anyone here has done something to ensure that our ratings are so high. Most of I can speak because I used to be an employee for 26 years. I just went out every day and did my job the best way I could. And I think we have a lot of our employees doing the same thing, and it shows. And we also have a very supportive number of residents who appreciate our services. Mm-hmm. And I think it's as simple as that. Now, again, it can vary based on a lot of external circumstances. I remember, for example, we got a rating one time that it's been a couple, 3 ratings ago, that they thought that the image of our city needed to be improved. I think some of you will remember that. And we sat around and thought about, well, what are they talking about? The image of our city. Well, they were talking about the physical beauty image of our city is what they were talking about. And so we thought about this, and we thought about the fact that when you drive down I-35, what do you see? Well, you see, buses, and you see industries, and you see different things. And that's when we decided to maybe make some subtle changes, and we saw improvements. We obviously made changes in the image, visual image that people started noticing because it improved. Now, we can't change the buses going down I-35. The business is there, and it's going to park buses out there, but that's what a lot of people see when they drive through the city of Merriam. Most of those people aren't on the survey, however, unless they're getting off of Johnson Drive and going home. But so, I would love for our ratings to continue as high as they are, but I feel so blessed the fact that they have been. And I don't know that we haven't changed anything in what we're doing. So you get the ratings you get. I expect them to be high, but we'll see. Any other questions or comments about the ETC rating process?
I'm sorry, I can't see everybody that's up here, but so just for some direction, if we kind of just craft some questions and we present them back next time, like we'll craft some questions that we think fit the discussion that we have here, recognizing that we're going to have other opportunities in the future to ask some of the larger questions that require backup. But what I'm hearing is just kind of take some of the things that we've talked about here and try to find some questions that we can get as many questions as we can on the sheet that don't require background enough that we can actually gauge which way the wind's blowing. Is that correct? Am I reading that correctly?
I would agree that sounds pretty good. I think what Scott, Councilmember Diebold, said about giving a menu and letting them rank some of those topics, making them so general, there's no detail or cost maybe, and see if they want to push us one way or another, because all of these things are things that we've talked about. And I'm just going to put in there that the art projects and placemaking were definitely an outgrowth of one of the ratings we got, that said our city's image needed to be enhanced.
Right. Yeah. No, we'll be, I think we'll be certainly anxious to see what you have for us to look at. Mr. Neal?
Yeah, I last comment. I would rather us not put the custom questions on that really do require some background, and then include some of the questions or proposed hypothetical questions that our city administrator just raised, because I think some of those issues are actually, when you start talking about how much money would be the city residents be willing to give up for economic incentives on a particular project, I think you're getting into an area where, again, that's just not appropriate for the simple questions. And so I agree with the real keeping them as general as possible, and then using polling tool in the future to address some of the more complicated issues. That's my take on it.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we'll move through the agenda to the next item then. No one has the objectives and objections, rather. We have council chambers AV discussion, audiovisual discussion.
It's me again, Mayor.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Just confirming you can see the AV project PowerPoint now. Okay. All right. So we are obviously meeting on Zoom for the time being. And one of the things that we have included in next year's budget is the opportunity to put together a program to provide live streaming and video archiving of city meetings. This was a city council goal. And so I want to make sure that we start having these conversations now. So when we come back and begin meeting in person, we have the technology implemented and we experience a seamless transition. So tonight, what I'm looking for is feedback from you all about how you would like your in-person meetings to look when they are videotaped. This is how we typically look today. I think everybody's eyeballs are kind of open in this picture. It was hard to get a good screenshot. But what's great about Zoom is that it is a relatively, it's actually a very cost-effective platform that allows us to get up close and personal to everyone and see facial expressions and easily see who's talking and track all of that information. This is a lot more challenging to do once we transition into an in-person technology solution. So I'm hoping to, like I said, get some guidance tonight on what's important to you as we do this. Is there a question?
I'm only just seeing the topic, the first screen. Did you move to another screen?
This one is up. I don't know what, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know. Sorry, guys. I'm not sure what's happening. Zoom.
Wow, thanks
I got
for
a
that,
Zoom
Meredith.
update. Huh?
Thanks for that.
Yeah, you're
That's
welcome.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for that. Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna go over some angles for how other folks who are doing this, how it looks for them. So one option that we have is just one angle or camera, put it either at the back of the room or off to the side that gives one wide angle shot of the entire council chambers. It's just like basically you're attending the meeting, like you're a member of the audience and you can just see the wide angle shot of what's happening in the meeting. The next option is to add another set of cameras that would do a wide angle and then also have a secondary set of cameras that could zoom in on the speakers as they're talking. This is obviously from the Johnson County Commission. There's an opportunity to be able to see the presentations that are being given as part of it. So to do some sort of split screen, we can either do something with the speaker and the presentation or just the presentation so that those at home can see any PowerPoints that would be showing, just like they can see when we're on Zoom. And then the Cadillac version is where once this is all archived and it's videotaped, then you link it to your agenda and people are able to click directly to specific links and watch the part of the agenda that they're looking for specifically rather than like the whole video on YouTube or on Facebook. So there are a lot of options here. I think I show you all of these to say that we can really design this to look however we want it to look. Of course, the limiting factor is money and the effort it will take on an ongoing basis. So some things that we're going to have to consider, closed captioning when we implement our permanent solution will be required. We're getting a little bit of leeway right now in the middle of COVID to not have to provide that. But closed captioning based on guidance from our city attorney will be something that's required. And that is really one of the hardest components of all of this is selecting a software and a closed captioning system or service that will be able to do that for us easily. Like I mentioned before, camera angles certainly increase the cost associated with it. One wide shot is the simplest method. But we do lose kind of this in-person, kind of up close and personal feel to meetings. Also, you wouldn't be able to see the front of whoever is presenting at the podium. You might only be able to see the back of their head and potentially not the PowerPoint if they're giving a presentation. There are solutions that allow us to do a much more produced version of the meeting, but that will also require somebody to be producing that either live or after the fact and switching between camera angles and screens. So we would have to have somebody potentially in the meetings doing that for us. There are services that you can hire that can do all of that remotely, or there's an option to have somebody kind of in the council chambers doing it with us, maybe somebody on our staff who has to be there to do it. The council goal talks about doing live stream. We certainly don't have to do that. There are a lot of cities who record it and then post it later on YouTube. There are some folks who stream it live on YouTube or Facebook. So I think a key point of consideration that does impact like how closed captioning works, for example, is are we going to live stream it, or are we just going to let people log on after the fact and view it? And then just to start putting some numbers kind of into the equation, a pretty basic setup is going to cost us about $50,000 to get everything connected. And then we're going to have about a $10,000 plus annual maintenance fee for the software, to run the software annually, and the closed captioning. The closed captioning is certainly the bulk of the cost there, even if you're using an automated closed captioning service. So there are a lot of moving parts here, and I think it would be helpful, Mayor, if you're okay with it, just to open the floor up and get some feedback on what people are hoping for when they think about what this experience will look like in the future.
All right. Whitney Yadrich, would you please start our discussion?
Hi, this is Councilmember Yadrich. I have a couple questions. First of all, so does Johnson County, they have a multicam setup? Do they have an in-person like producer or TD, like technical director?
Yeah, they have a team on site.
Okay.
Who does that?
And then a question about the closed captioning. If we were to live stream, that would require live closed captioning. If we were not to live stream and do instead YouTube archiving, where you could use auto captions, would that fulfill legal obligations?
Yes,
It would.
it would.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, and we have looked at that. So Whitney makes a good, or Councilmember Yadrich makes a good point that it changes like what kind of service you can use for closed captioning, and the accuracy of it, of that service changes depending on whether you're doing live stream or you're putting it up later. We can make it work for any of it. It's just, money. That's it.
Sorry, and then my follow-up question to that was about audio. So that would require that all of us have our microphones and the microphone, and we would have to run audio for all of us and the presenter, and then potentially like the rest of the chamber as well.
So we probably wouldn't have audio for the rest of the chamber. So we already have a mic system. And so we knew at some point when we made the audio upgrades to the council chamber that we likely would want to videotape our meetings at some point. So we have a majority of that infrastructure already in place. So yeah, we will be able to use the mics that we have with some very limited tweaks to that system.
Well, and then my final question is about neighboring cities. I'm typically, when we're making choices, I always hate to default to, but what are they doing? Because we should make our own choices. But at the same time, Johnson County is, a level of government up from us and has more resources probably than we do for these kinds of things. And a multicam setup seems like a bit much at first blush here. But I'm curious about what the comps look like for the neighboring cities.
There's no standardization across our neighboring cities. So for example, Shawnee doesn't videotape, they post an audio transcript of it after the meeting. Overland Park has a system similar to Olathe and Johnson County. So the big cities have a much more intricate system. At one point, Prairie Village was just like had, the cell phone propped up and they were streaming it live. They're moving away from that because of the closed captioning requirements. Lenexa is currently looking at doing something as well. They don't videotape their meetings right now. I've worked in a previous city where we would videotape it. We were actually on the cable access channel and stream it live and then post an edited video after the fact. And that was a pretty significant production for on average like 7 views on the YouTube video after the fact. It's a much larger city. Just for comparison right now, other than council and staff, there are 2 people who are viewing our video as we're on here right now.
Only one of whom is a resident.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it is an investment. It's nice to have the video, to be able to go back and look at it, but it is certainly a financial investment.
And if we were to do multicam, this as a follow-up, we would need someone to edit that together?
Yeah, so we would have a switch in the meeting where we would be switching between camera views. So we would be able to do some of that live.
and
Okay.
be able to switch angles. And we do have people on our team who would be able to do that,
Yeah.
but it's our communications staff. And I mean, this is a significant time investment.
So
Like I
we're-
was saying, there are services who can do that all for us remotely. They just log into our system and they handle switching and producing. But there's a fee associated with that.
And I don't have it in front of me, and this might be something I can just go look up, or one of us can, but how much did we allot in the budget for this, if I remember correctly?
We have about $60,000 available to us
For the whole year?
for the whole year.
Okay, thank you. I'm done. Thanks, guys.
There's a number of hands that have come up, so I'm going to try to go in order. Bob Pape, I think you were first. Be sure you hit your mute or unmute.
Yeah, it's always interesting to try to unmute myself. Yeah, I think, the fact that we have two people, I always like to try to look at things as a cost benefit, but I also realize that we've been Zooming so long that if we take away the fact that we are, videotaping or able to watch these at a different time or even currently from home, it's going to seem like we're hiding something. And when our level of transparency may seem like we're not as transparent as we were. And we're always trying to increase the level of transparency for us. For me, it comes down to each of these levels, I think, and what's the cost? I mean, before I could decide, what do I like, just the wide angle view? Do I like, just YouTubing it? Or, obviously it seems like we're going to do the 10,000 no matter what with closed captioning, but I think we need some numbers on
So
different levels.
yeah, this is the base. These are the base numbers that I'm providing you here. So it only gets more expensive from this.
Yeah, but does it go to 100,000 or does it go to?
Yeah. So like in Overland Park right now, they're like close to $150,000 for a new system.
Wow.
Yeah.
But those are the base numbers if we do closed captioning live, not if we were to archive on YouTube and have the YouTube language multilingual translate or caption it.
So that the equipment is just to get our the software and the switches and all, or like the room up to snuff for it. And then these are the estimates that we're getting from other cities to do auto captioning. Yeah, not live streamed.
Okay, so that's post.
Yeah.
Bare bones, no live.
This is the bare bones level.
Makes more sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Neal, you're next.
Okay, obviously this is certainly an important issue for me, and I would second the comments that Councilmember Pate made. I also want to point out that this particular week, interest in what's going on in Merriam on a political level is probably way down below the interests of most people in politics on things going on at other levels. So, but I also think that, most of the time when we're not, normal time, there won't be a lot of interest, but there are going to be times when we're dealing with issues that are important to a lot of people. And that's when the absence of this will be most noticed and will come back, to haunt us. The fact that we've had some vehicle during this COVID-19 period, and then to not have it, I think is almost, we just can't really consider that. So then the question that I actually have is, you've got capital costs and you've got ongoing costs. And so for the various options, it would be nice to get a better idea of how you split those out, how much increase in the capital cost portion of the thing and how much increase, at some detail level, like for different variations in terms of both the production. Yeah, I would think that somebody trained could actually sit there and do the editing, if you will, as we go, and it might not be perfect, and that would be one cost as opposed to, post-production editing, which is a lot more, intensive, and you'd expect a better result. But and then the closed caption options, I'd like to know a little bit more about the costs for those under the different scenarios, in order to be able to move forward. I just think we have to move forward with something that is, is reasonably similar to the level we've got right now, even though nobody's watching today.
To be clear, sorry, Scott, to be clear, not doing anything is not an option. Nobody's brought
Yeah.
that up. We are going to do something. The conversation about is, do we want to see, do we want people to see our eyebrows, or do we want people just to see us in the distance? So I don't, the conversation is not about will or will we not do this. We know the level of expectation is there. We put it in the budget. It's just simply what level of service for the amount of people, even in the most interesting of times in Merriam City Council history, do we want to produce a video for posterity? So I mean, we fully intend to videotape our meetings. It's just, again, are we talking about multi-cam, or are we talking about a single cam that sits in the corner and that's sufficient? But yeah, we can clearly get you the tiers of costs to help make the decision.
Well, and I just want to add on to that is I think our challenge right now is there are literally so many options that we can move forward with, is that even if you can give me some like gut inclinations of, we would be like, we really like this Zoom where I can see everybody's faces and, as Chris says, eyebrows, or I want something, I'd be fine with one camera on the back, live stream versus YouTube. Because that's our challenge is.
Or how much money do you want to spend?
Right, yeah.
How much is too much to spend a year?
Like
50 grand?
narrowing of the field here would be very helpful to staff so that we can pick a direction. Because every city does do this differently. There's not a kind of best practice that we can look to. And so I want to come back with an updated presentation that has some more detail, so we can start making real decisions.
Based on how long a person's been waving their hand that they want to talk, I'm going to ask Jason to go next. Make sure you take your mute off.
I have two computers set up here. I couldn't remember which keyboard it was. So I think the important question that we all need to think about is what the purpose of filming our meetings is. And I think to be fair to our citizens, we need to document it so they can go back and watch it if they couldn't attend the meeting. But I don't think we need all the glitz and glamour. And this is coming from someone, I guess I'm going to brag a little bit. I used to make national TV commercials. And now I have a YouTube channel that I push out a video every week. So I've done, the $1 million budget, and I hold a camera budget. I also know that YouTube's closed captioning, though it's amazing, it's not very, it has its quirks. So I think it would suffice, but it's not as good as if someone is typing it in. Now, my opinion is we document the meeting with one camera, and we can use the YouTube closed captioning. So our level of transparency is there for our citizens, but we're also being realistic about how much money we're asking them to pay for this, especially if we're getting 1 or 2 views at at our regular meetings. And that's also coming from someone who doesn't get nearly as many views on their YouTube videos as they would like.
Chris Hands, and then Scott.
This is really interesting. I do want you to know that I have gone to our channel and looked at our Zoom, and I think having the presentations available at the same time that the voice is talking about has been very helpful to me to go back and say, oh yeah, that's what they said, and that's what it all ties in together. So I like having the presentations available. I don't need to see my face. I really don't, but I do like to be able to see that everyone is in attendance. That's obviously very important. The other thing I want to be sure as we go forward that we say, if we start here, this system is growable. So that we can enhance it, we can enhance it, we can enhance it. I want it to be a stepping stone. I think that would be very valuable. Thank
you. Mr. DeBold?
My thoughts on this, going to repeat a few other thoughts here. I'm breaking it down pretty simple. One view, okay? If they come to a meeting, they get one view. Right? They're sitting in the seats looking at us. I think it's important for attendance. Nobody wants to see this face any closer than this, I guarantee you. Closed caption, obviously, we know is important. The presentation, like Chris said, very important, right? But I think another thing we're forgetting is sound. So people walk to that microphone, you can't hear them. And again, everybody knows I'm deaf as a doorknob, but people have trouble hearing that. Sound needs to be important. The transparency, as Jason suggested, things are done at meetings, recorded by individuals, okay? And then things are put out in social media that are incorrect. And we've seen that multiple times. I have in my 6 years. Okay, this is a way that when that false information or that incorrect or misleading information, or they forgot something, is a way to document exactly what happened at that meeting. And hopefully that people will have that opportunity. We don't need to live stream this. Okay, put it on YouTube. Keep it simple. If anything's taught us with Zoom, people still aren't going to attend. Whether it's live or whether they have to show up and sit in a seat, they're not going to show up, right? But if something comes out there that gets their attention, okay, makes them angry, those kind of things, give them a resource where they find the exact information and not the distorted information. I'm done.
Great, that's very helpful.
Mr. Neal.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that was said. I also want to say that I was going to suggest exactly what Councilmember Hands did, that I do think when you attend the meetings in person and you can see the presentations put up on the screens there, that is a component of the in-person experience that I think we should replicate if possible. I would also think that it would be great to see the speakers, any speakers we have. So at least maybe the camera, facing the speaker, whoever comes before us and to present is helpful, along with being able to see the presentation. That's, I think that's kind of maybe an extra, but probably be worth it.
Ms. Hands.
Sorry, going to piggyback to what Councilmember Neal said. If we could do, maybe not even have a camera on people, but if we had headshots for us on the opening screen and then for the speakers. So there's a headshot so you know what the person looks like. I think that might be helpful.
Great conversation.
Thank you.
I think it's given us a lot of information that we've wanted. My take is on it that this is such an evolving technology now, because Merriam, and along with thousands of other cities across our country, are struggling with this issue. And while we're on this COVID lockdown, so to speak, this is an easy topic because what we're doing now is actually pretty effective.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got to prepare for the next generation of being back live again. And I think everybody is struggling to do the right thing at the right time. And I think if we were as a city to jump to the Cadillac version, for example, I'm just going to use this as this is my belief. We're going to find out that 2 months after we've jumped to the Cadillac version, it's not the Cadillac version anymore, because it's evolving so quickly. And what I think we should do is we should start with the first step to be slow and minimal in terms of what it does. And I think you've made the right statements. You've said YouTube documentation. If I can't make a meeting, because realistically, we want people to come to our council meetings. We don't want to make it so easy that they can just dial in and do a thing. They need to get out of their house and get in their car and drive and become a participant in democracy. So we still want to encourage that, but we still want to document it, because there's some people that can't, weather, disabilities, whatever, and we want to do the right thing for them as well. And I think that's where we need to be on the first level. And I think a year from now or 2 years from now, we can actually decide if we want the Cadillac version, and it will be the Cadillac version because it'll have evolved to that. So a lot of great stuff. This has been a great conversation. Amy, got anything to add, Mr. Silvers? See your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody that though it is really nice to have the presentation visible while you're watching the meeting, there is the ability to put links in the description. So a link to a PDF can be put there, so someone could bring up the presentation PDF while they're listening to the presentation. So we do have the flexibility of doing that without buying the Cadillac version.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah,
we've
this has
given you
been very
a lot of
helpful.
stuff.
Good deal. All right, I will get to work on putting this together so we can get this project started.
I'm going to close this out. We're going to move into council items. We're going to get a community center update.
Hey there, it's me again. All right. Since I'm struggling with this tonight, you can see a screen right now that says Community Center City Council Update. Okay, great. I'm not going to touch anything now. So here we are, first meeting of the month. And this is going to be our second to last update. I know I had a Facebook memory pop up from 3 years ago when Anna and I were in Orlando getting this project kicked off and learning all about how to build a community center. And we are finally coming to the end of our project. So the December update will be the last monthly update. There will likely be a project closeout update for everybody to go over final budget figures in January. We just want to make sure all the final pay requests get in so we can report final figures to all. But we continue to be under budget, which is great news. We're doing finishing touches on the building right now, but if you've been over there, gosh, even in the last 2 weeks, you can see that some of those lingering items have been resolved, and it looks great now that the art has been installed on the site. It looks very finished on the outside, so we're really excited about that. Project schedule, we're off the timeline now. So we're just, days away from wrapping this up. We're just on that kind of final punch list of items. Like I mentioned, the art has been installed. It's beautiful. If you haven't had a chance to go check it out, we had some questions before this meeting. So the piece on this entire collection is called Basque, and they're designed to go together. If you recall, the pieces on the ground feature words that the artist collected while she was out at National Night Out in the farmers market. So they are words submitted by Merriam residents and really highlight what people love about our community, which is a really cool feature. These pieces on the ground are designed to be experienced, so you can sit on them, stand on them, climb on them. The works, which I think is a really fun feature for this area. And then they do light up, and we're still working through the lighting controls for these. So you can expect that you'll be able to see them illuminated, and they do change color in the next, hopefully by the end of this week. Let's see. Oh, the other, it's no big changes on the inside since the last time that we talked, other than I think the art and some little finishing painting pieces, that sort of stuff. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about it. Mayor, you're muted.
If you have any questions, raise your hand. I'm kind of going through the list here. I don't see any.
I see Brian and Bruce.
Brian and Bruce. Let's go with Brian.
I know in the budget we put $200,000 in for cost after opening. Did we spend any or all of that money?
Yeah, so we have spent that money. We will be giving money back at the end of the project still, but we did budget to get in there and realize we need equipment and that sort of stuff, and we have spent some of that money.
Okay.
Bruce?
Yes, how does our membership compare to what was originally planned?
I'm going to make Anna live to edit that or to answer that. Anna, you're unmuted, or you're available to unmute.
Our membership right now is about 30% of the pro forma, taking into consideration we didn't have a summer season and we would have had summer memberships. as well as the number of day passes that would have come with summer memberships. So we are still seeing a positive growth of memberships. So, you know, I give us a little bit more time to hopefully bring that number up, but that's where we're at compared to the pro forma as of the beginning of October.
I've got to believe that COVID-19 has had a very far-reaching impact on people's desire to go congregate in areas where they work out a lot. So
Yeah.
Well,
that wasn't the case. We really don't have any baseline to go by at this point.
no, and having, I mean, you think about the restrictions that places have on how much capacity you're at. So where we're at is probably would be appropriate for COVID.
I can personally vouch for that because 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, I took my 2 grandchildren and went swimming. I never felt endangered other than being overwhelmed by my grandchildren in the swimming pool. But other than that, I mean, it was a fun and safe and clean experience, and I can't wait to do it again. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Anna and Chris. We'll move to let's see where we at. CIP update. Jim McDonald, you've been hanging on all night for this.
Yes,
Our
sir.
House Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I've got your update for November. I'm going to start off with the 2020 street and storm drainage improvements, which was the Johnson Drive, BSF to East Limits, and Madison Street improvements, Johnson Drive to Shawnee Parkway. That job is complete. We had all the punch list items addressed, authorized, and now that triggers the 2-year bond for that project. Staff plans early spring of 21 to go and walk the project, do some sod inspections along with the new plantings, and then have the contractor take care of any of those items that may have not made it through the winter. We've got them guaranteed that through April. And then in about 18 months, we plan on going out, walking the entire project, finding any cracked sidewalks or anything that needs repaired or replaced, get all those items taken care of before that 2-year bond expires. Our East Frontage Road, which is our 2021 CARS project. Right, currently we are just in the design phase for that project. Staff, along with the Finnis, walked that project area. We performed field checks and we're measuring up quantities for that stretch of East Frontage on November 4th to find any potential conflicts, to see if there's anything that they need to move or get out of our way. We have a pipe that we have to replace, so we're making sure that we're not going to impact anything important when we're doing that. And then right now we are working with KDOT to make sure their contractor repairs any damage to curbs and some turf out there that wasn't part of their project, so they can get those items fixed before it becomes our problem for our project. I know there's a few areas out there that they're addressing that. So I'm here to answer any questions on the CIP projects or any public works.
Mr. Silvers.
First of all, I just wanted to say that I saw the street cleaner out, which I was thrilled about. I saw that you and your team were addressing a cracked piece of sidewalk, replacing it. So it was a recent addition. So it's awesome seeing that you guys are out there spotting work that needs to be fixed. My question is, well, first of all, I want to say I took advantage of the large item pickup this time. It was very helpful. Thank you. Your team was great and efficient. But I was wondering, did people take advantage of it as much this time as usual? Because your crew got to my house a day early, which was awesome. And they did come back the next day to hit the houses that didn't have their stuff out, but it made me think that maybe they got through the neighborhoods quicker than expected.
Well, we typically try to keep our crews working, especially through your area, because your area is on Friday. So our guys don't want to work late on a Friday night. So if we can get through, we'll move on to the next day's area. It seemed like this year, Monday and Tuesday were our heavy days. And Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we seemed to kind of glide through it pretty easily. So it didn't seem like it was any heavier since we didn't do the spring. I'm still waiting on the quantities or the tonnage from the trash hauler. Wants to get us that information. We'll put that in the admin report, and we'll know better once we get that.
Well, your team did great, and I think I surprised them by stepping outside and thanking them because they didn't know what to say. But I was really happy for the large item pickup. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Chris Hands.
Since we've already had one snow, we're all ready to go for whatever the winter has in store for us.
Yes, all of our equipment's up, and I believe it might have been today that Jenna put the video of our crews on Facebook. We did some training last week where we have some new drivers, and we spend pretty much a whole day going through all of the bad areas, we know where to put snow on some streets and how to get the trucks through our narrow streets. So it's a good training for our experienced operators plus our new operators too. So if you get a chance, look at that video on the Facebook.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Jen. Mr. Engel, do we have any staff items this evening?
Just only was more just an update and really to acknowledge some folks. On Wednesday night, I had the great pleasure to speak at the community center to the graduating Citizens Academy class, which is a great opportunity. Anybody that's had the opportunity to do that, Councilmember Caldwell was a member of that class. Anybody, public at home, anybody that's on the council, if you haven't had the opportunity, that's a great opportunity. I wanted to just acknowledge the folks that, especially in PD, that helped pull this off during the pandemic, but also those that were actually attended. You know, it's tough to get away from family and obligations and work, and if you're able to pull that off, I think it's a great opportunity to learn about our police department. Now is it's a topic of discussion in our country. So I think that getting to know them and getting to know the work that they do, and that really, as I've shared with the attendees, that they're really just like us, that they're people just like us. We just kind of task them sometimes with extraordinary tasks. But anyway, just wanted to acknowledge the folks from the Citizens Academy and then the PD for putting that on and enduring through the pandemic to pull that off. It was a good time, and hopefully everybody that participated got something from it. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Sellers.
I just wanted to say that it looked like Bruce had a really fun time helping with the taser presentation.
There you go. There you go.
You know, Chris, I take exception that they're just like us. The police do things that I wouldn't do. You know, they're the ones that run to trouble.
Yeah, true. Well put.
You should be happy they didn't have an OC demonstration, because that's way worse than the tasers. We've tasered probably over 400 people at the police academy, and it's a kind of a rite of passage to get through the process. It's definitely something.
Sounds like you're keeping score like on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
Over 400 now.
They've tased 400 people and loved every single one of them.
Here's the thing: we haven't lost any of them. They're all still alive. That's the main thing.
Well, our classmate that volunteered to take the taser, you know, I just helped him fall down. I told him it was the very least I could do.
We tell our recruits that the OC day is the worst day you will ever have in your life, and it is. And after that, the taser is actually pretty easy, because after 5 seconds it stops. Where the OC spray, it lasts all weekend long. So, very good, and it's great. I might ask Mr. Engel to check with the Northeast Chamber of Commerce. They have a program. Leadership program, I think, that they've opened up, and we've allowed council people in the past who have the time to be involved in the leadership program. And the leadership program in Northeast Chamber basically talks a lot about community, and particularly business community. If you have an interest, you might want to look into that. That may be something the city might be interested in sponsoring. Many of our department heads have been involved in that, and really get to learn about cities and businesses interacting with each other, and gaining networking possibilities and so on. It's something to think about. If you have an interest, reach out to Mr. Engel, and he'll give you more information on that.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Mr. Engel?
I think Councilmember Neal had a question or comment, but I don't have anything. I'm but happy to answer
Go ahead,
questions.
Mr. Neal.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, see if you find out something about that, if you can put that in the admin report, I'd certainly appreciate it. That was it.
Okay, Ms. Chris Hands.
So one more point on the community center update. I have really enjoyed going to the gallery. I'm able to go in off hours, nobody else is there, wander around, kind of miss my little wine glass, but other than that, it's really nice. And I just want to put a plug in for the person whose show is up right now, is someone that I worked with at Hallmark Cards. He was in software development with me. So, and he's now has his one-man art show, Mike Shue. Just be sure and check out the show.
It's a great facility. Yeah, it's a very, very cool facility. The way we've been able to integrate that into the larger community center. It's fantastic.
All right, well then at this point, I'll entertain a motion and a second to adjourn. Mr. Pape.
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, Mr. Neal's a second. Madam Clerk?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll see you next time.
Bye, friends.
Bye.